this is some audio from the Joe Rogan Experience. It's always a crapshoot whether or not they're going to pull your video if you play Rogan stuff. I don't know what the copyright rules on that. So to be safe, we've used the audio of an episode with Joe Rogan and Tom Segura. Is it Tom or Tim Segura? I forget. It's written down in the video here. But here's Joe Rogan saying what we've been saying about the state of the campaign. So I know we have ruffled some feathers by acknowledging the fact that Donald Trump is really blowing this and that Kamala is being managed very well. But this is a good piece of audio to show you guys. So here, the most red-pilled man in all of Texas seems to agree with us. So this is Exhibit A for our case.
Or at least in Austin.
In Austin, that's right. That's right.
Let me tell you, before I say anything, I just want to say, whoever's helping her, whoever's coaching her, whoever's the puppet master running the strings, you did a fucking amazing job.
She did a great job.
They did an amazing job from the moment Biden drops out, forcing Biden to drop out. Right, whatever they're doing, whoever's writing those speeches, getting her to deliver them, coaching her, she's nailing it. She nailed that one speech. She's like, "Say it to my face."
Oh yeah,
everybody's cheering.
Yeah, she nailed it, dude.
And then last night, to me, when I was like, "Oh my God, this is jujitsu," where she's like, "If you go to his rallies, his crowds are boring. They're tired. They all leave her. My crowds are the best crowds. I have the number one crowd." He couldn't help himself.
And she got him. She baited him on that. She walked him right into it.
100%. 100%. See, the difference in that debate was not a difference in like who's going to have better policies, who's going to be better for the country. The difference in the debate, in my opinion, was who was better prepared. She was way better prepared. And even when it came to answering tough questions, instead of answering, she would just say things that she believes.
Yes, sure.
And they sounded real good.
Yeah, that's
the soundbite.
That's called being a savvy politician.
It's also called being someone who's working with a team versus someone who's like,
I don't need.
They said Trump, that deal was the best deal. They've never seen a deal like this before. They said, "How did you put that deal together?"
People thought that was just brilliant. Yeah, I know. He was like,
he's not working with a team that's like. I mean, I know he's doing like mock debates. I know he did one with. I think he did one with Tulsi Gabbard, but. Someone needs to like tell him like you've got these tiny little windows and you should have all the words ready for those windows.
So there you have it. There you have it from the man himself. Don't kill the messenger. We're just telling you what is perceivable to the average person. And I think part of Joe Rogan's appeal is that he, comes off as a more or less average Joe, no pun intended. But, now when you look at the math of the race, and I think Russ kind of put this well a couple shows back where like mathematically, mentally, it seems like Trump has the edge. Kamala's up nationally in the popular vote. The swing state polling is now an absolute dead heat. Like literally, according to Real Clear Politics, they are tied at, I believe, 47.8 points apiece in the average of swing states. So it is a dead heat in the swing states. Yeah. So, I mean, this is, as polling-wise, it's as 50-50 as you could possibly get. Which means the real question now, and this is where your gut comes into play, which electorate is it going to be? If the polls are tied, if the electorate looks like 2016, that means Trump wins. If the electorate looks like 2022, that means Kamala wins. My gut at this point is that it's going to be more of a 2022 type turnout. That is what my gut says. Now, can I back that up? Not really. The only thing I would say at this point is that in 2022, those midterms, we made the mistake in 2022 of looking too much into the online game. Oh, Tulsi Gabbard endorsed Balduch up in New Hampshire. That means he's going to win. It hardly did anything, right? Yep. On Twitter, that's huge news. In real life, that's not such huge news, right? So I don't want to make that mistake again. But also, I felt in 2022 a much more palpable rage in the air. I mean, I remember I went to get a slice of pizza at a local pizzeria the Monday before the vote. So election day is Tuesday. It was the day before, And I order some pizza. I go to the bathroom. I come back, and the guy behind the counter is ranting to his coworker about how expensive everything is, and he's just on a tear about his taxes. He's just so I said jokingly, so I guess you're looking forward to voting tomorrow. He says, "Oh, I can't fucking wait to vote tomorrow, man. I'm so pissed off." And there was rage in the air because don't forget, at that point, the shock of inflation was newer. It felt like there was just this incompetence in the air. It felt like every time you left the house, you were in for an adventure, right? Where the lines would be so long because the stores were understaffed. Everything was so expensive. The supply chains were off. So the stores were half empty and everything cost a fortune. And even in that example, the normie, Dobbs vote came out and overcame that palpable rage. I don't sense rage in the air now. I sense exhaustion in the air now. And Kamala seems to be that sort of Xanax that you could just take and go quietly into that good night. I don't sense the same rage. And so for that reason, I tend to think
Kamala is essentially the Seneca candidate. You're going to go into a warm bath and self-delete with Kamala.
Yeah. I don't mean literally, obviously, go quietly. I mean, send the country to its end peacefully rather than go out in chaos. Remember the show Midnight Mass, where there's that very poignant scene where they all are infected with whatever the thing is, and it's late at night, and all the townspeople are just sort of very quiet and reserved about the fact that when the sun comes up, their time is done, and they all are kind of at peace with that. That's the Kamala campaign. The Trump campaign, remember, it cuts to the psycho woman who's frantically digging under the sand to try and get away with it and screaming. That's the Trump campaign, right? So if I had to create a metaphor, that would be that. And I think, when you start seeing guys like Rogan sort of start to notice that, because Rogan's audience is the online audience. I mean, this is the edgelord Twitter audience. So when even he is starting to see, hey, you know what? Kamala's doing what she has to do. Doesn't mean he likes Kamala Harris. Doesn't mean he approves of that. She's doing what she has to do to appeal to people in this moment. I think there is a recognition in there that, yes, this is a country that has given up on itself. This is a country that's not really ready to fight this out. And that's really the question. Is the country accepting of its fate, or is the country really frantic to try and save itself? I think that is embedded subconsciously throughout the population. And that's why my gut says Kamala's going to eke out wins in these swing states. Now, I could very well be wrong. The math suggests I probably am wrong. A dead heat in the polls tends to favor Trump. Trump has more paths on the electoral map to 270 than Kamala. Less stuff has to go right for Trump to get to 270. So I could absolutely be wrong. But I sense the mood in the country is one of resignation, not of resistance. That's my sense.
Okay. And as I heard you go on that monologue, I can already hear the objections. I'm so angry, I chew glass in the morning as soon as I get out of bed. All right, well, that's you.
Right, that's you.
That's you. That is the mistake that a lot of people who are terminally online make. They think they represent a lot of people because people who are that angry are disproportionately represented online of all ideological stripes. They spend a lot of time screaming into the void because they've burned out everyone they know in real life. So it's the only place they can go to really express these things where they're not going to just be ignored. So you wind up having the notion that there's a lot of you. And then whenever it's put to the test, you realize you're Tobias. We are dozens.
Right.
Dozens. It's not. Absolutely. The country is falling apart. And there is a lot of despair and anger out there. Remember, a huge portion of people who feel that way have checked out of the political system entirely. They're just not even voting. If they did, neither one of these candidates would be running.
Of course,
if you had something like 80-90% voter participation, where there's just too many people in the system for the Democrats to rig their elections and their primary process, or for the Republicans to be taken over by a kind of nationalist movement that is rightly rejecting the old neocon establishment, but hanging its solutions on a completely unsuitable figure in the figure of Trump to really reform the system. Yeah, neither one of these people would be running. But the people who are most angry, they're not participating. They're not participating. Yeah. So, and within the Republican Party, you still have a lot of those registered Republican voters who are Mitt Romney Republicans. And the more of a freak show that the Trump campaign becomes, the more they're going to sit it out. Or in the burbs, a lot of them will end up voting for Kamala.
Yeah.
The Trump campaign is making itself so bizarre and so threatening to a lot of people, whether you feel that way or not, that you're increasing the number of voters who are going to say, better the devil I know. I pretty much know what Kamala is going to do with this. Who knows? Who knows? I don't want 4 years of fighting over Project 2025 or whatever the fuck. As Keaton says, there's a resignation. Let's just keep going this way, and hopefully we don't have a nuke coming over the horizon one morning as I'm having my coffee.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, look, I think that is pretty much right. And look, when we talk about terminally online people, we don't mean that in a condescending way. We are terminally online. I mean, we make a living online. This is what we do. I'm a very online person. I think the lesson of 2022 was that we don't reflect the norm in society. We are the exception. I mentioned, yeah. Exactly. I mentioned the Nate Silver book a few shows back, The Signal and the Noise. There's a lot of information in every cycle. Most of it is noise, meaning most of it is not useful to predict an outcome.
Right.
There are few pieces of information in every cycle that you can use to predict an outcome. So, for example, in 2022, there was a lot of noise in that election about the supply chain and about inflation and about gas prices and stuff like that. And that was all real information. It was legit information. But the signal, the most relevant piece of data in that campaign cycle was that Kansas, 2 months before the national vote, voted 60-40 to codify abortion rights in its state constitution.
Right.
If you knew that and nothing else, you would have predicted the 2022 outcome much better than if you had known everything else but that. Do you follow? So, like, if the only thing you knew to try and guess how that national election was going to go was that Kansas voted 60-40 pro-choice, you would have predicted the outcome better than if you knew everything else but didn't know that piece of information. And what seems to be the big piece of information this cycle is that even when Biden was tanking and Trump was surging, there was a set of polls that came out that said a generic Democrat still beat Trump handily. And that seems to be the relevant piece of information that not only is useful to predict an outcome, but was very useful in shaping the strategy of the Kamala Harris campaign. Okay, we have this data that says even as our candidate's in the toilet and Trump is surging, we still know a non-entity polls better than Trump. So there's no such thing as an actual non-entity, but if we can make Kamala as much of a non-entity as possible, we could maybe squeak this out.
Right.
Yeah.
2016, the most relevant signal to me was everyone I talked to back home, which was very kind of blue collar area, which in New York, the politics are the same as blue collar areas anywhere in the country. I knew people who would have voted for Sanders if he had been the candidate. I knew people who were going to vote for Trump. I did not know one single person who was voting for Hillary. And I said, if that's true where I come from, that's true in areas like that everywhere, all over the country. Second most important signal, and I think of it to this day, I don't know who published this article, but there was an article that was on the ground talking to voters in the Midwest. And there was a guy who was a Democrat. And he said, talking of Hillary Clinton, he said, I'd rather have someone stick a wet noodle up my ass than listen to another one of her speeches. And I said, it's 50-50. Yeah. And only 50-50 because he's Donald Trump, there were plenty of reasons for people not to vote for him, but she was so despised even by people who were Democrats, and the people who were crazy about her were kind of electorally meaningless because they're all concentrated in deep blue cities that don't matter.
Right. Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Please clap.